awesome people, this is Jude from Awesome LCG. Today we are going to make this beautiful ice cube in Maya and Redshift. First, let's look at some real ice cubes and see what elements we have to make. Okay, in real ice cubes, there seems to be some kind of bubbles. So we need bubbles. And then there are like micro scratches in the middle. We're going to create that as well. Then there is actual cracks on the ice cube itself. So we are going to create those things as well. Let's create a cube in Maya and scale it up a bit. Move it onto the grid and let's add some divisions. Nice. Let's select all the edges. So we'll go to the edge mode and select all the edges in the cube. And then we'll convert the selection to vertices. Then we are going to average the vertices so it creates like a roundish shape. Yeah. Then we'll select all the vertices, shift, right click, edit component. You can move in or out, whichever the taste you like. I like to move it in. So we have a random looking cube now. Let's add some divisions to this. So divisions is different from smoothing. If you smooth this guy, it's going to look even rounder, but we don't want that. What we're going to do is we're going to add subdivisions on top of this. So it's not going to smooth, it's just going to add more divisions to it. So let's go to edit mesh, add divisions. This looks like there's a bit too much. Let's reduce it to 1. Okay. Yeah, this is good for me. Let's add a smooth as well. Yeah, this is good. Before we get into texturing this, we'll make a nice background to this guy and add some basic lights so we can see it properly. Let's create a plane, scale it up. We want to have some kind of a ramp so we get like nice fall offs on the lights. So let's make a bend deformer. Let's go to deformers, non-linear, blend. If you hold J, you can snap into 45-degree angles. Let's see what we're doing here. Okay. So it's rotating like that. Let's convert it like 2D. Cool. Yeah. Let's increase the curvature. Yeah, that's good. Let's create a camera. Before we do any kind of lighting or texturing, it's always good to have a camera setup. We can always render from that, and we can save the renders like the rendered images. Then we can go back and see the progression and everything, and all of them are in the same camera, which is great when you want to showcase what you did. No. Yeah, that looks good to me. Let's Control A, lock the camera so we don't move it by accident. Lock it. Okay, that's our. Let's move it back a bit. Oh no, you can't do that because it's the deformer is still working on it. So if you're happy with the deformer, let's delete the history. So these are my buttons. This is delete history. This is freeze transform. Delete center pivot. Rather than going into all these menus and spending time, I'll just go like history, freeze transform, and center pivot. See how easy it is. Let's move this back. So the band is for the back. Okay, now we have a camera, we have a background. Now we need some lights. Let's create a dome light first. Redshift, dome. Let's do a test render for fun. Okay. So that's my test render and it's rendering from the perspective. Let's switch to our camera and do another render. That's looking okay. It's too smooth. Okay. Now we need to assign HDRI map. What I'm going to use is free HDRI that I got from the internet. So this is the HDRI I'm going to use on the dome. So in this one, we have some nice yellow color lights coming from the side and blue light coming from the top, which is really nice. I like it. So let's assign that. We are going to see the reflections, but it's not going to be that detailed. So it doesn't really matter whether it's a low res or a high res. Let's render this guy. Okay, I kind of want the yellow light to come from this side So we'll rotate the dome light. I'm going to use the same method that I used. Let's see. Oh yeah, you can select a region and turn on the interactive, so you can see when you do changes, it, it changes. It changes live, which is nice. Okay, now we have a good dome light coming in. Let's add area light to get some strong specs and things like that later if you want. Okay. Mm, you know what? Let's get rid of the. Oh yeah. I want to have kind of a spot feeling to it. So the light area is going to be here, and it's going to fade up out from that. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the spread of the area light. Yeah. Let's move our background back a bit and scale it up a bit so we don't see any corners and stuff. Okay. So when you reduce the spread of the area light, it's gonna make it brighter because it's sending the light in a smaller area but the same intensity. So we are gonna reduce the intensity. Yeah, that looks good. Let's keep it a bit smoother like that. I don't want to see like yeah. I don't want to see like a solid hard edge to it. And I like it. I like it. I like it. So let's offset it a bit so it's not right on the top. Yeah, it's good. Let's place our cube properly on the. No, the cube is in the right place. I think the background is. Yeah, the background is lower than the floor. So let's bring the background up. Yeah, that looks good. Now let's go into making the material for the eyes. Click on the object, right click, assign new material, scroll down to Redshift material. Water is the place we're going to start from, you know, and then this text doesn't really matter because it's a reactive object. We're going to bring the roughness, we're going to have a map in here, but we're going to change this to 1.5, IUR to 1.5, on dispersion to 10. We want to have separate control over refractions. We're going to put roughness on the 0.2. We're going to bring up the samples to 64. We want good looking stuff. I'm going to use two textures on this guy, one for the roughness, reflective roughness, and the other one for the overall bump. I'll show you what I'm going to use. I just got this off of Google. This is what I'm going to use on the roughness, this on the reflective roughness. Let's connect that to our roughness file. So that's roughness. Let's get the bump as well. For the bump, I'm going to use this texture. It's not blurry. It has a lot of smaller details and it has a lot of value, but it looks darker compared to the other one. So that's what I'm going to use for the bump because we need like smaller details on it. Let's get that on the bump. We're not going to keep it point. Yeah, let's keep it 0.05. Yeah, we can change all this stuff when we add the rest of the things. I mean, if we can't really see the stuff that's inside, we need to add the new things, right? As we talked in the beginning of the video, we need to have some bubbles in this guy. So let's get the bubbles working. For the bubbles, I'm gonna use Mesh, Maya Mesh. It's really easy to use, and if you're really trying to manually make bubbles, it's gonna be painful. So okay, let's do some house cleaning. Let's rename these guys. Otherwise, we're gonna get confused. Eyes cube. This is the ground ground. These things we know what these are. Put them in a group called light. First, we need a sphere. Create a polygon sphere. Let's hide the ice cube for a while. Huge bubble. We don't need a bubble that big. But things like that doesn't really matter because we can adjust the scale and everything once we get the bubbles instance around. We're going to call it bubble. Bubble geo. Okay. We're going to connect this geo to the mesh network. So we go to modeling, FX, mesh, create mesh network. Make sure you reset these mesh options because you may have changed some stuff. Reset, apply. So what we need is these cubes to fill into the cube that we created before. Control Shift Edge, this guy. So what we're gonna do is, first of all, we are gonna duplicate this cube, and we're gonna hide the actualized cube. And we're gonna name this called bubble cube. You'll see why I duplicated. So we have bubble cube. Okay. So we select the mesh network, and you get these controls. We go to distribute. Right now it says linear. That's why you're getting that. Let's go. Yeah, that's why you're getting that. So we'll change that to mesh and scroll down to the mesh attributes and change the method to voxels. And yep, it's asking for input mesh. We're going to give the bubble cube as an input mesh. So the thing is, the minute you select it, the things are going to disappear. So the trick to do this is select the mesh network, middle mouse drag to right here. Okay. See, now all the bubbles are around it. So the first thing, the bubbles are huge. So let's scale them down a bit. Okay. That's good bubbles. So first of all, let's go to voxel attributes. So we select voxels here, and in voxel settings, maximum voxel count to 100, and we are going to reduce the voxel size. The problem is you're going to stop seeing whenever they go in, so we are going to change to X-ray. Oh yeah, now you can see all the cube bubbles inside the cube. Let's bring this to something like zero point 0.4, like yeah, something like that. And we need this to be randomized. Let's randomize these guys. For that, we're going to go to our mesh network, and we're going to create a random node. Click, add random node. It's sticking out of the cube. Don't worry about that for now. Position random, that's good. Scale random, we need the scale to be random, so we put 111. We turn on absolute scale, so we get different random sizes like small and big, and we turn on uniform scale to get rid of these like flat looking things. See, now you have randomized spheres. Let's bring up the rotation just for, we did some directional things with our sphere, so it's better to keep it like that. Turn on our ice cube, go to Shift Edge. So that's our ice cube, and this is our bubble cube, the one that I duplicated. So now the spheres are sticking out of the cube. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scale my bubble cube. Still, I still feel like the bubbles are too big. Let's scale down the bubbles more. So let's go to mesh, distribute. Oh, let's put 200. Voxel size again. Yeah, that's a good amount. You still see some outside. I'm not really sure how to control this, but I can show you how to get rid of those. So I'm not worrying about the stuff that's outside. So I like the bubbles that are inside, and they have a random shape, and I like it. Let's try to scale up our bubble geo a bit. So we have some random shapes, like, yeah, see, it's all elongated and in different angles. Once you create a mesh network, it's going to create an automatic mesh repro mesh. So that's all the geometry that's created by the mesh network. When you're happy with the scale of the bubbles and the randomization, you can control D that and delete the history, freeze transform, and center pivot. Delete the original mesh geometry and the mesh node network. Now we should be able to move this without a problem. Scale it. Okay. Let's get rid of the bubble cube as well. We don't need it anymore. Let's get rid of all the bubbles that are outside our cube. Just make sure you delete all the bubbles that are sticking out of the cube. You can do a lot of things with this. Like as an example, if you select those and go to animation, deformation, lattice, we can see. I mean, it's very art directable, the bubbles. Let's bring these guys down a bit. Oh yeah. Delete history, so we get rid of all the deformations that we just did. Let's do a render and say, okay, first save this guy. Most important thing, you don't want to lose what you did. Let's render. You're not seeing it much. I think that's because of the bump. And yeah, let's first reduce the bumps just so we get the bubbles correct, and then we'll go back and bump up the bump. Or let's reduce the bump a bit more. Let's put it 0 for now. Let's see how it looks. I'm gonna assign the same ice material to our bubbles. Did we name the material? Oh, we did not. Let's name it. Ice ice cube shader. Let's select the bubbles and assign the ice cube material to them. Let's see how it can look. Ah, what's going on? They are disappearing. Okay, I'm gonna explain why this is happening. So in real life, when you have bubbles, the actual pockets of air inside of the ice cube. So what's happening now is when you have two geometries intersecting each other, you have bubble, you have the main cube, and then you have the bubbles inside. So if you think about the shader, you have an AR to glass, then inside there's a glass to glass because the bubbles are thinking like, okay, we are glass as well, so glass inside glass, and there's nothing there. So the way to fix it is to invert the normals of the bubbles. So we select the bubbles, we go to modeling, mesh display, reverse, and then we render this. Oh yeah, we're getting our bubbles. If you don't understand this, what you should look at is the rendering realistic glass, the tube that I did before. I explained this thing pretty extensively. So yeah, the bubbles are looking good. Let's bring in our bump. Okay, like we talked before, we need our ice cube to have cracks in it. And there's a nice way to do this. Select the ice cube, go to effects menu, effects, shadow. First things first, go to edit and reset the settings, and then go to solid shadow, and then change the shard count to 10, edge jaggedness to 0.25, 11 or something to it. Okay, let's turn off triangulator, triangulate surface. Let's turn off apply interior material. So let's can I scale this? Yeah. So let's apply. So we have the cube selected and we can apply. It's gonna take a bit of time. Let's check it out. So let's hide our original ice cube, and this is our shattered ice cube. Let's see how it looks in the render. Things gonna look weird because it may not have the shaders inside, so don't worry. If you don't like the look of how things cracked, you can just delete this guy and go for another one. You can increase the shard count and you can increase the jaggedness and make sure you get the look you want. But this is a tube, so we'll just stick to this guy. Let's assign our ice cube material to all the geometry just to make sure we have it. Let's see what difference that makes. Save this guy and render. So right now, all these cracked interior pieces, I'm talking about these pieces, are are standing on top of each other. But so that's going to be a huge problem when it's rendering. It's going to create flickering and all this stuff. So to get rid of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all those pieces. I'm going to delete history on them, freeze the transforms, and center pivot. So what happens is when you center the pivot, you don't really see it here, but when you center the pivot, each, because I have selected multiple object, each object is gonna select the middle of that object, and it's gonna change the pivot point to the middle of that object. You know, so yeah. So now what I'm gonna do is I center the pivot, and I'm gonna scale this down. So right now it's 1. We're gonna put it to 0.999. It's a very small amount. You don't really see a difference in here, but it works for the render, so the geometry is not standing on top of each other. So it's going to make sure that there's no flickering and weird stuff happening. So let's render this guy. If you render an animation, you're going to see the changes. Let's save this guy and render another one. Geometry, so let's put the bubbles inside our shattered ice. We'll name it shattered. Shattered ice cube. Shattered ice cube. Now what we need is the white color crack look that's inside the ice cube. So for that, let's close this guy down and we're going to create a sphere. Scale it up. Let's switch to X-ray so we can see it. X-ray. Okay. Let's scale it right in here. That's looking good. Let's delete some. Okay. Let's isolate the sphere and go out of the X-ray. Okay. Let's delete the top and the bottom. We are going to use the same kind of methods that we used before on the ice cube to get this sphere a random shape. We're going to shift, right click, transform component. Let's add another subdivision to this guy so it looks smooth. Yeah, smooth. Okay. Delete the history so we don't have all this stuff. Okay. Uh, okay, let's render this guy. Okay, now what we need to do is we have to put a transparency map on this guy and make sure it looks like streaky and white. So we're going to rename our deformed sphere ice whites. Ice whites, and we are going to assign a new material to the ice whites. We're going to select the ice whites, right click, assign new material, redshift material. We'll name the shader. Okay. So this one is just pretty simple. Okay, let's turn on interactive rendering so we can see what's going on. Okay. Let's 0.5, let's make it 0.75. Okay, we're going to increase the translucency 0.2 and we're going to increase the color of that to 0.85 so it's whiter, and we are going to bring up the roughness so it's not reflective, it has some kind of a streaky feel to it. So the way we are going to do it is by using a transparency map. So let's hide the ice cube for a while so we can see what we are working with. So this is what we have, the deformed sphere. Let's open the hyper shader and get our ice white shader. For the transparency map, I'm going to use the same grunge map, which is this guy. I'm going to use this map. All the black areas would be transparent and all the whites would be opaque. So let's bring in him. So in Redshift, there's a node called sprite, Redshift sprite. So let's select that guy, bring it in. Let's delete the shading group because we already have one. So you have to connect the grunge image to the image name right here. So basically, yeah, you don't need a file node. You can just connect it to this guy. Okay, that's connected. And the sprite node has to be connected between the shader and the shading group node. So input this one here and output here. Yes, that's what we want. So right now it looks spotty and not very streaky. So using this, you can control how much it's visible. I'm going to go something like that. But still we need these to be streaky rather than spotty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the object. I'm going to go to Windows, Modeling, UV Editor. I'm going to deform the UV so we get streaky. See, that's what I'm talking about. Oh, yeah. Yep, that's what I want. So, yeah, that's what we want. We have it now. It's streaky. Let's unhide our shutter cube. And that's it. These areas looks a bit too bright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the light to get rid of that kind of issues. Let's see what's going on with the lights. I'm recording. Okay, let's scale them down a bit. Yeah, that should work. Yeah, like that. That's good. No, not that far though. It's pretty close by. Yeah, yeah, I like it. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to reduce the intensity a bit more. I'm gonna put 10. Yeah. Otherwise, these things get too bright. So, as a bonus, let's add some caustics. In Redshift, there are three places that you need to turn on caustics. First, you need to add it to the object. And because we have multiple objects, oh yeah, add the ice whites into our shattered cube as well. So, we want all these guys to have caustics. I'm going to select the group and I'm going to go to Redshift, Object Properties, create Redshift visibility node for selection. And I'm going to select that and I'm going to turn on caustic photons. Okay. And then you have to turn on the caustics on the light. So I don't really want caustics from the dome because you're not going to see it. It's going to be soft. So we're going to turn it on the area light. You go down and there should be something called photons, emit caustic photons. Then you have to turn it on in the render settings. You go to photons. Oh, I have already enabled it. So you have to enable it like that. And let's do a test render. The thing with this ice cube is it's refractive, so that's why it looks very noisy in these areas. So to get rid of those, you have to hit the samples pretty hard. So first, let's add some samples to our light. 1 to 8. Let's go to our samples. Let's see the difference between having caustics and not having caustics. So let's save our image with the caustics and turn off the caustics and render another version. Let's switch between the two, caustics without caustics. I hope you guys learned something from this. And please like and subscribe to my videos so I can create more content like this. And if you have any questions or when you try to do the theory and it didn't work out, always comment so I can give you feedback and try to fix the problem. Thank you.